I'm Sarah Bivens.
And I'm Matthew Bivens.
We had a home birth back in 2016.
So we started a podcast about it.
And then grew it into a birth brand to help future and current parents believe in their success with home birth.
This is the place to hear home birth stories, along with helpful resources and tips to feel empowered and supported in your birth journey.
This is Doing It at Home. What's up, Doing It at Home fam? Welcome back to the podcast. I'm Sarah. Today's episode is the healing and life-changing power of birth with Abby Marks. Ooh, yes. So, just want to welcome you. Thank you so much for being here. This is Doing It at Home. This is the place for empowering home birth conversations, for parents to feel confident in their choice, in their process, in their journey to home birth and beyond. Really everything surrounding home birth, from the preconception phase to pregnancy, birth, postpartum, parenthood, marriage and relationships, and beyond. You know, we're really about the home, as in you. You are your home wherever you go. And that's really the doing it at home mindset and philosophy, is you are wherever you are, right? And for you to have an extraordinary, magical, beautiful life. And we love talking about that through the space, through the conduit and the medium of birth and birth stories and our journey and everything surrounding it. So that is who we are. That's what we're up to. I want to give a quick shout out if he listens to this in editing or post-production, or I don't know, maybe he listens to the show on his own time in the car. Who knows? Matthew, my co-host, my husband, my partner in life and business, my baby daddy. We have been together for 9 years now. So this week, this beginning of the month here in November, marks 9 years of togetherness. We met back in 2010, were friends for a couple of years, then did the dating thing, then got married in 2014, had Maya in 2016, and then launched this whole crazy journey and part of our lives. And I just want to give a thanks and gratitude and love message to him, because this whole thing wouldn't exist if it weren't for the two of us meeting all those years ago, and our togetherness and our love and fun and everything that we create together. And so thanks for being my partner, Bivens, and thanks for putting a baby in me and doing this whole crazy thing with me. I really appreciate you and I love you. So there's that. And then also just quick reminders for ways to get plugged into the Doing It at Home community further, to support the show, to ensure that other people find out about Doing It at Home, to share it with others. You can do a couple of things. One, whatever device you're listening on right now, there is a description of the episode that you're listening to. Below that is a list of links. Check out those links, because that's where you can subscribe to the show. One, you can do that from whatever device you're listening with. You can check out our Doing It at Home book, available on Amazon. You can go to our website. You can sign up for our email list. You can join our private Facebook group. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, which has some really great video content on there, us talking about all sorts of different topics in the Doing It at Home world, as well as video versions of our interviews and clips from our interviews. You can follow us on Instagram. You can check out the Doing It at Home merch and shop, and you can donate to Doing It at Home. Those are all the links there for you to check out, to get further plugged in, to learn more about Doing It at Home, to find more of our resources and the things that we offer here. So go check that out. Okay? All right, back to the episode here. What we talk about in today's episode with Abby, we talk about a hospital birth, then switching to a home birth plan. We talk about what it's like when your husband was born at home and when your mother-in-law is a midwife. We talk about fears around the safety of home birth, education and building confidence for birth, and the experience of pain in birth, and this little phenomena called the labor denial, which many of you might be very familiar with or have heard of before. Quick word from our sponsor, and then we will hear Abby's story. Doing It at Home is sponsored by KiwiCo, a subscription box filled with playful activities designed especially for curious and creative babies and toddlers. It feels great when you're getting a gift for a friend, family member, or your own little one that's not only age appropriate and fun, but it's dedicated to developing their skills and their growing brains. Like the Panda Crate we got for our 10-month-old niece and the Kiwi Crate we got for our 5-year-old daughter. When you sign up, a new crate is sent to you every other month and you can cancel or pause at any time. There's no commitment. Build a foundation for early learning with the Panda Crate from KiwiCo. Get 50% off your first month plus free shipping at kiwico.com/DIAH. That's half off your first month at KiwiCo, KIWICO.com/DIAH. Hey, Abby, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Awesome.
Yeah, we're fantastic. We're super excited to be talking to you today, Abby. So thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. I'm really excited as well. I've been following you guys' podcast for a long time, so this is a big treat to be a part of it.
Wow, very cool.
I love that when things come full circle and, we have listeners who use the podcast in their journey and then are now sharing to be able to contribute to the space. And now someone else is going to get some just this ripple effect and this pay it forward kind of thing that's been created in the community is so cool. So I love that you can be a part of it as well.
Yeah, me too. I think it's pretty awesome.
And you have quite a few things going on right now, Abby. So why don't you just fill us in and share a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So obviously my name's Abby. I am married to my husband, Cassidy. We've been married for 4 years. We have a 3-year-old Maverick. We have a 1.5-year-old Sebastian, and I'm also 32 weeks pregnant right now with our first baby girl, Amelia, which we'll call her Millie. So yeah, I do kind of have my hands full and growing our family, and that keeps me busy. That's for sure.
That's beautiful.
That's
and
wonderful.
Yes, that keeps you busy, but then there's other things that you do in terms of the birth world
Yes.
and birth community.
Exactly. Yeah. So I'm kind of new to birth work. This past January, I made a transition out of my previous job. And originally I was going to become a childbirth educator. And then it kind of trickled into doula work, which led me to become a postpartum doula. And then from that also trickled me into being a midwife assistant. So now I'm actually getting my hands, wet with home births, and it's been pretty awesome. I just had my first 2 births this last month as a midwife assistant. So it was a game changer for me being on the other side.
Wow. And pregnant too, because
Yeah.
I imagine there aren't a lot of pregnant women out there who get to attend births, unless they are, of course, birth workers. But how is that? How does that feel?
Well, it's challenging trying to, normal pregnancy symptoms. Obviously, I'm tired, so having to stay up for a long labor can be a little difficult. And then the physical aspect of it, bending over into a birth pool, all of that. So it can be challenging, but it's pretty awesome because I feel like I can relate to the moms on a level that, not everybody can.
Yeah.
And I feel like a lot of times, even especially with postpartum doula work, they feel really comfortable with me. Just because you have that automatic connection. They're like, oh, you're going through this, you get it type of thing.
Mm-hmm. We were talking before officially hitting record about how our own births can sometimes change our lives, like whether that's our careers or passion work that we do. It doesn't necessarily have to be a whole career shift, but how we could very much relate to that and how that's kind of the case for you. And I'm sure there are others listening right now who are maybe on that track. Their births have impacted them in such a way. Now they're doing some sort of birth work in some way, or might get into that eventually. Like they could see that down the road. And I just find that such a fascinating thing that, that your birth can really change. It's not just the moment of your birth. It could be the next few decades of your life that it influences.
Oh, absolutely. Oh. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had Sebastian in January of 2020. And I joke all the time, but it's not really joking that birth completely changed my life. Yeah. It was, I have a master's degree in psychology. I always had this path that I was going to take. I was a social worker for a long time. I had a corporate job, did all of that. And then I went through what I went through and I was like, hold up, like, this is not what I'm meant to be doing. I need to completely change gears. And I, just made the jump, and it was a little scary in the beginning. My husband was like, are you sure you want to quit your job? Because it was a well-paying job, and to go from that to being your own, doing everything on your own, it's definitely intimidating, but I knew in my heart that, I was led to this experience for that exact reason. And I was like, I have to do this. I have to get involved in some way. And so that's kind of, I definitely agree with you. It's interesting how life works sometimes.
Yeah.
It's such a cool parallel between trusting yourself to make that career leap and then the trust that's required to be able to have that home birth. I could see those two parallels in you.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So let's go back in time a little bit and kind of walk us through the influences to choose home birth, because your first birth was in a hospital. So however that looks like for you, to kind of break that down for us, how would you do that?
Sure. So I had Maverick in the hospital. Back in that time, what's the best way to put that? I was very, do whatever you're told. The OB is always correct. You don't question anybody. I just kind of went with the flow. I did not take one childbirth education. Well, I take it back. I took a breastfeeding class, but I didn't take any birth classes. I didn't care what anybody had to say to me. I was like, yeah, we'll just do this, right? And as you know, and as a lot of people know, when you have that go with the flow attitude, it doesn't always go with the flow. So I had him in the hospital. At the time, it was okay. It was a very, very fast birth. I had him in 45 minutes.
Wow.
So it was very intense, and it was just, the only way to put it is I was not there to go with the flow. I was just, it was a struggle. But it never felt really traumatic or bad or discouraging or anything until I knew a little bit more. Now looking back on it, I'm like, that wasn't really the best experience. But yeah, so I had him in the hospital, and then we get pregnant with Sebastian. I kind of had started dabbling a little bit more into birth, but I wouldn't say it was anything serious. Like, I wasn't like obsessed with it like I am now, which is a heavy word to use, but it's the truth. And so we were going to have him in the hospital again, or have Sebastian in the hospital, I mean. And I went for, I don't know what week it is when you go to get your regular, like the genetic testing.
Okay.
And I had a kind of an encounter with the doctor, and he was kind of arguing with me a little bit at the genetic testing because I was declining it. That, I should do this, I should do that. And it was very like, I felt like I didn't have an option. And then I went to go get, I did agree to have just my normal blood work done. And when I went to get that done, he wrote the order anyways for the genetic testing. And again, I was like, well, that's not cool. I said I didn't want it, but I kind of just was like, whatever, screw it. I'm not going to fight with anybody. So I got the test done, and I got a bill for like $500 for that genetic testing. And I was
that you didn't want
standing there with my husband. I'm like, yeah. And I didn't even want it. And I'm standing there with him, and I'm like, this is just crazy that I had very bad insurance, high deductible. So a lot of what we had to pay was out of pocket.
Yeah.
And it kind of triggered me to think back to Maverick's birth. And after I had him, we got stuck with, it was over $10,000 worth of bills. And I did nothing but go to the hospital, laid in their bed for 40 minutes and push the baby out. I had no medication. I had no, that's the way I look at it pretty much. I went to the hospital, laid in the bed and birthed the baby. And I started thinking about it. I'm like, this is, we can't pay that much money again to go through that experience again. It seemed very silly to me. And so it was originally, it was a financial decision. I was like, it would be cheaper for us to have the baby at home than it would if we went to the hospital, and, went through those steps. I did know that I wasn't going to have an epidural again. So I was like, well, that's another factor. Why would I go, there's obviously a lot of factors into it, but initially it was financial. And then I kind of just started thinking about like, how would we even make that possible? And my mother-in-law is actually a midwife. And so I figured I would, have a chat with her. And she doesn't practice anymore, but obviously she still has her skills and everything. So we sat down, we made a list of questions about like safety and, those kind of concerns that you think about around a home birth. Because again, I did not know much about any of it. It was just a financial decision. And we had a really great discussion with her, and I felt really comfortable that we decided that, we would go forward and she would deliver our baby. And I just kind of never looked back from there. I think I was like 24 weeks pregnant or something around there. I was after 20 weeks. I already had my anatomy scan. Like I was well established with the OB.
Yeah.
And I just never went back. And since then I was like, we got pregnant with this baby and I was like, not going back. We're having baby at home again. It was just kind of a trickling fact from that.
And had your mother-in-law attended all home birth and hospital? What was her background?
Yes. So she's a licensed midwife. So she doesn't have rights. I mean, well, in Florida, I'm pretty sure that's everywhere.
Yeah.
But in Florida, licensed midwives can't practice in hospitals.
Got it.
Nor would she probably do that anyways if she had the rights to.
Okay.
She's very big on home birth. She had all her children. She has 4 children. They were all born at home. She's, always been led to home births more so than hospitals. But she was practicing independently, dozens of births by herself. So I felt, and she knew what she was doing to help us out there.
Cool. So Cassidy was born at home.
So actually I should backtrack.
Okay.
Almost.
Oh, okay.
Almost. He was the only child that she transferred to the hospital with for pain relief. And the second she got to the hospital, she pushed him out. So it was one of those like pointless situations.
I like that.
But all of her other 3 were born at home. So
clear. Okay.
She had the intentions on him as well.
Gotcha.
So what were his thoughts about home birth and, his fears or questions or anything like that, given the history that he had right there in his family?
So he was actually probably less fearful than I was. And I strongly believe that that's because of his background and how comfortable his mom had always made those things for him.
Yeah.
He might not agree with that. He might say like that that she didn't really influence him that much, but I think subconsciously she did. When you're submerged in that lifestyle, it's going to affect you whether or not you think it does. Mm-hmm. But I pretty much, when I told him that we should do this, he had no hesitations. He was like, sounds good. I mean, when we met with his mom, I don't even think he was fully a part of the conversation. Like the fears were more so on my side than his. He was very comfortable with it from the get-go.
That's neat and interesting. You don't always hear it that way.
No, you don't.
So can you share what some of those top fears were for you?
For me, I was scared of, the life-saving thing. So again, I didn't know anything about midwives, really. I never educated myself. I had that perception that they show up with a bag of herbs and, like that kind of, how it is.
I love it.
Yeah.
A bag of herbs.
I didn't know anything. I had no idea the level of training that she had.
Yeah.
And what she was capable of, not just her, but all midwives. Them bringing the medications, doing CPR, all of those things. So I had a lot of fear around just the safety of everything. Specifically, like, what if he comes out not breathing? I didn't realize that she was trained to handle any emergencies. Another thing was, getting to the hospital. I live very close, 15 minutes or so, but for some reason I was like fearful that something really bad would happen from the time that the home birth would be called off and we would have to call EMS to getting to the hospital. But she had reassured me that majority of the time they they know when something bad's going to happen, and they call that transfer long before there's a serious emergency. I mean, not 100% of the time, obviously, but a lot of the times they can read that out and kind of call the shots on what they feel is safe before it's really a serious emergency.
Yeah, that is a really great point to note, that because of the level of observance that midwives tend to put into the experience, they are a few steps ahead, in the sense that if there is a transfer, if there is something beyond a exhaustion factor, that there's plenty of time. Like it's been padded into their thinking of when the transfer happens. And I think one thing that just brings up for me to note is, you hear about a transfer or maybe some element of a birth not necessarily going the way anticipated or intentioned in a home setting, and how that's just blasted as, look, this happened and this was a home birth, when the inherent risk of birth in any location, this could have occurred, whatever the thing was. It's just, the way we tend to kind of sensationalize and see, look, this happened because it was at home. And it's like, this could have happened anywhere. And actually, if it did happen in a hospital, the interventions that would have been laid on could have made it even a bigger situation than just hey, we need to transfer and do what we need to do. So it's just something that I notice out there, like the one-offs of this happened and it was at home are so few and far in between, but the amount of noise we can put around it can be enough to deter people or to convince people of like, see, home birth isn't safe. And it's just kind of frustrating.
Definitely. Yeah. I agree with you. Definitely. And, one thing that I try to wrap my head around, and I don't know if it's like correct or not, but I was thinking a lot about those transfers, since that was a fear for me. And it's like, what's the difference if I had an emergency and they had to wheel me to the OR, or if I had an emergency and I had to get transferred by ambulance to the OR?
Right.
I lived that close to the hospital that it was like, there was no difference. I mean, I would have to wait for the nurse to call the doctor and do all of this and that. And, and so it was, I kind of tried to remember that a lot of times too, that, if there's an emergency, you're going to get the same care. It's not going to be any different. You might get pushback afterwards, but they're not going to treat you any differently as they're wheeling you into the door.
That's a great point.
Let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll talk about birth time.
Let's do it.
Perfect.
Are you pregnant and feeling overwhelmed by the books, classes, and all the advice you're getting? Meet 7 Starling, an all-in-one support system that guides you every step of the way from pregnancy through postpartum, from childbirth education to newborn care to postpartum recovery and more, all from the comfort of your own home. Here's how it works. You get matched with a dedicated doula and a hand-picked small group with similar due dates to yours to go through your journey with. You meet virtually every other week, and you can text your expert anytime for additional support. This is the kind of stuff I wish we knew about when we were pregnant. We've been able to access 7 Starling's programs and chat with their experts. This is an affordable and effective way to get education and, importantly, community. All of this support at your fingertips for just $37 a month, and you can cancel at any time. When you use the code DIAH15, you'll get 15% off the entire duration of your membership. Go to 7starling.com to take a short quiz and get started. That's SEVENSTARLING.com and use the code DIAH15. Before we get into birth time, Matthew has a question. So We're going to do that and then birth time. So hit it, Matthew.
So Abby, you have experience of having a home birth, right? The first home birth. And then now you are doula, training to be midwife assistant. So you have all this additional education, all this additional training. How has that impacted how you're preparing for your second home birth?
Education is power, right? So being educated and knowing even more than what I, knew when I was going into Sebastian's birth has just been invaluable to me for mainly my confidence level. Like I said, I had a lot of fears about the safety and this and that when I had Sebastian, and this go around, I mean, I have zero fears. Like I'm just super confident in it. Do I know that there could be something that comes about? Of course. I mean, it's birth. It's not predictable. But the education piece has, like I said, just been totally invaluable.
And what type, when you talk about the education piece, has there been any pieces of information or any topics that you've learned about or you've studied that has really quieted any of that internal conversation or just created that greater sense of peace and confidence?
I would say just learning about just the natural process of birth, and how we really truly are made to do this, and how much all of the interventions that are put in place a lot of times that we see as normal really hinder that natural process, and just being confident in how we're made and what our bodies are capable of. Just that's probably one of the main things, and then also just the learning, like I'm NRP certified, neonatal resuscitation, so having those pieces brings another level of confidence. If my baby comes out, if heaven forbid, let's say my midwife didn't make it, knowing what to do in an emergency situation. Now I have that education as well.
Yeah,
that's great. I think it's also, to add one more layer to this, important to look at where the education is coming from that you go into, or if you go to a class or a course or something like that. I mean, I do not know what a childbirth class in the hospital is like. We didn't do that, but I've heard of those who have taken it. And even for those planning a hospital birth, many recommend not taking the hospital's childbirth education just because of the lens that it's coming through. And I have a friend just recently who's preparing for a hospital birth, went to whatever education they do there, and she came out not feeling great, in the sense of just, I think what the slant was, or here's all the things that could happen, which get it, understand that. But I believe it'd be, like you're saying, the confidence level and understanding the physiological process of birth. I believe it would be beneficial to explain to someone, especially a first-time birther, everything physiologically that goes on in a birth with no what would happen with no intervention, none at all. And so then you understand what the natural course of it is. And then maybe you can start implementing, if it goes this way, this, if it goes this way, this. But I feel like it almost primes the mind to be expecting any slew of the interventions, because that's the space you're going into. So, for those who are planning a hospital birth and might be listening, or not, and just, looked at a local hospital for education, in my experience, what I've heard, that's not the best place to get your childbirth education.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with you. I do teach childbirth education classes now, and that is 100% the route that I take. I try to avoid talking about any interventions unless it's brought up. It's not a part of what my normal class would look like, just because I feel so strongly that if you know the truth about the process, it really is going to make a difference. Whereas if you go in thinking about like, oh, if I am failure to progress, they're going to do this, and it's I wouldn't say it's important to know those things, but it's helpful to have the knowledge. But I think it's more helpful to really know what our bodies are capable of and what that looks like, instead of what the hospital looks like.
That's great. I really like that.
Yeah,
that you worded that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I feel like also the timing of when you get certain information plays a part. So with us, one of the first things that we did that I remember is watching the DVD Happy Healthy Child, Happy Healthy Child. And just their approach was everything that you're saying, Abby. Like, it's just natural. It's natural. This is what everything's supposed to happen. This is how we've done it for thousands of years. And for me, receiving that education and that information at the very beginning of our process preparing for a birth was so important, and it helped me to create that that perspective and that context that made me feel very confident right off the bat, so that later on, when we did talk about possibilities of things going this way, things going that way, my mind wasn't so fixated on, oh my gosh, stuff could go wrong, because I already had been primed with all this information as to how natural everything was. So I think too, the timing of when certain pieces of information are introduced can have a huge influence over what that person ends up focusing on.
Absolutely, for sure. That's why I love when I have classes with first-time moms and dads too. It's because they don't have to unlearn anything. They don't have, that knowledge in their head already of the negatives. And I don't want to call it a negative, but unfortunately it kind of is. To be able to put that positivity in them right from the get-go, so that is the first thing is I agree. I think the timing plays a huge role in it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Well, that was a super valuable tangent. Thank you, Matthew, for bringing that up. Okay, let's shift gears and get into the birth experience. So walk us through your home birth.
Sure. So, okay. So I can't remember if it was Saturday or if it was Sunday. He was born on Monday, but either 1 or 2 days before, I started having some sporadic contractions here and there. Nothing serious. To kind of backtrack a little bit, I didn't mention this before, but with Maverick, I had like a week and a half of false labor. So here I was with Sebastian. I was like, only 36 weeks pregnant, and 36 or 38. There was some discrepancies on my due date. So I might have been 36. I might have been 38. I don't know, but I was towards the end, and I started having some contractions. Figured it was the same thing that I was going to go through again, have all this false labor. I went to lunch with a girlfriend. I told her, I was like, I think maybe tomorrow should be my last day of work, just in case, and so continues all throughout that Sunday. I wake up in the morning, contractions are still happening. Looking back on it, they were a little bit more consistent than I thought they were. But I went to work, and I'm like, doing my normal thing, just working. My boss was there. There was a couple of contractions where I was like kind of having to breathe through it, but I'm still like in this, like, this is fake. They're going to stop, whatever. Let me just finish what I'm doing and then I'll go home. So I left work probably around, 12 o'clock or so. Came home. I had texted my mother-in-law, which is my midwife, told her kind of what was going on. She was like, do you want me to come over? I can check you out and see, what's going on. I was like, no, everything's good. So took the dog on a walk, very, very long walk. I mean, I was gone for like about 2 hours or so, still having these contractions. But they were never really painful. They were totally bearable, walking through them, talking through them, completely normal life. So again, comparing it to my previous birth, I was like, this isn't the real thing. So no red flags, like nobody, let's not jump. But I did agree to have her come check me at 3 o'clock. And so she came over around 3:30, and she's like, oh yeah, you're, 4 centimeters, definitely almost 100% effaced. She looked at me, she's like, you're going to have this baby tonight. And, if it gets worse, call me. And I was like, you're lying, but okay, whatever. So I just keep, going through my day, and sorry, I have a little pop. So just keep going through my day, and contractions are still happening. They weren't getting any closer. They weren't getting any more painful. I would say they're probably about 5-7 minutes apart, which is crazy to think that I was in that much denial, having a contraction every 5 minutes. But, again, they weren't painful. And when I had Maverick, I had him very quickly. So I went from 0 to 100 in no time. Like the second I had the one real first contraction, they were 1 minute apart, and it was very, very painful. And it never stopped until I had him. So when I'm having these contractions 5 minutes apart, I'm like, still have that mindset of like, okay, this isn't the real thing. So hours are passing. They started to get a little bit more intense. I would say at that point, I started to realize, okay, maybe this really is the real thing. But again, I was at my house, and it was just very peaceful, and I was able to just live life and continue my normal routine. So it's, probably about 5:30, 6 o'clock now. I'm cooking dinner for my family and kind of leaning over the cabinet a little bit for when I was having a contraction, but it was still totally, it was still totally bearable. I mean, I was, like I said, just living my normal life. And about, I don't know, it's maybe 6 o'clock or so. So 3 hours later, after she had checked me, they definitely started to ramp up. And I sent a text to my midwife and my mom, and I was like, "Oh, you guys can come over if you want, but I think we still have a little bit of time." And in the background, my husband's texting my midwife, like, "You need to come."
No, I
right
don't.
now."
Get over here.
You know, like he was totally not falling for it.
Don't
He was
listen to
not
her.
in the denial mode that I was. That's for sure.
That's funny.
So they just continue to, ramp up. But it was, again, like, I feel like I'm kind of repetitive, but it was never really bad. And I was never in a lot of pain. And I felt like if I was not in a lot of pain, it really was not happening. So, in my defense, I feel like I was allowed to kind of be in denial when you have a painful experience versus one that's just a smooth ride. And so around 6:30 or so, my midwife shows up. At this point, I mean, they're coming pretty quick. They're, probably 3 minutes apart or so, maybe even less than that. I was walking around the house, playing with the kids, just kind of, doing what I can when I have a contraction. But other than that, just, like I said, living a normal life. And then I would say probably around 7 o'clock or so, she asked if I wanted to get in the tub, because I had a birth pool set up, because that was my intentions, was to have a water birth. And I was like, "No, I don't think it's ready yet." She's like, "Well, do you want me to check you again to see where you're at?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that sounds good." So we walked back to the back bedroom, and she checks me and she's like, "Yeah, you're about a 10. And I was like, "What?"
Wow.
I was like, "Are you serious?" Like, I was walking around, I was talking, not even just talking, but I was talking through contractions, which is like your number one thing. Like, when you can't talk anymore, that's, I was fully just, it was just a wild experience. And so I walked back out to the living room. I sat on the couch and I was like, "Wow, I can't even believe, like, what is going on." And I had a friend of mine coming to take pictures. And she lives about an hour away from me. So she was already on her way there. And I texted her and I was like, "Yeah, I'm pretty much complete." And she was like, texting me back. She was like, "Are you kidding?" So she's like stepping on the gas, trying to get there like real quick. And so she walks through the door, and it was about at that exact time, I would say maybe 10 minutes later, was when it got really, really intense. I was laying on the couch, and the contractions, like, all I could do was, moan through them or yell through them or whatever I had to do. They were super intense at that point. And so that's when my midwife was like, "All right, we definitely need to get you in the tub. Like, this is it. It's going down." And again, I was like, no, I don't want to get in. And I was like, "Oh, I have to go to the bathroom." And it's like, red flag. Everybody knows, well, most people know that if you've had a natural birth, the sensation. Feel like you have to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Well, you can try, but you're going to have to get off the toilet because it's definitely the baby." And I was like, "Oh, no, I don't believe you." So went into the bathroom, sat down on the toilet, immediately was like, "I'm having a baby right here," and fell on my hands and knees and just started pushing. The first time I pushed, my water broke. Second time I pushed, his head was out. And the third time I pushed, he was born.
All
It was-
right.
Wow.
That was pretty remarkable.
Yeah.
And it was it was an amazing experience. To go from my first birth, which was very, I will call it painful. I don't like to use that term for, birth, because I feel like it's very fearful. But it was very painful for me. And so then to have this second experience that was so not painful at all until like the last 5-10 minutes, I mean, it was just incredible. So then he comes out, he was breathing, everything was fine. But he definitely needed a little bit extra stimulation, some, TLC to get him really crying and going. I wouldn't say he was like in respiratory distress or anything, but he definitely didn't come out screaming and happy-go-lucky. So she had to do a little bit of work on him, no CPR or anything like that, just getting him going. And then, I just laid on the bathroom floor with him for about 10 minutes or so. And then we got up and we went into the bed, and it was, it was very smooth transition. And then after that, he did take a little bit of time to get latched on and start nursing. He wasn't very interested in it. So we, made sure that we were like watching him and everything with that, because I wouldn't say he did a first good latch for probably 4 hours or so after he was born, which was a little stressful. But
yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
How was Cassidy in the experience? And then when Sebastian arrived, how was what you can glean from his perspective?
Well, I mean, he thinks I'm a rock star because, I was in the bathroom, so he couldn't really see. It was kind of unfortunate for him.
Okay.
Yeah, we had a very, we live in Florida, and the houses where we live on a beach, in a beach town. So the houses are very small. It's not like we have this huge master bathroom suite where we were all fitting. We were like really crammed tight in there.
Yeah.
So he couldn't really fit, but he was able to watch him be born from like a little bit of a distance.
Mm-hmm.
But he was, he thought it was pretty incredible too, because from his perspective, I was in labor for 5 minutes.
Right. Because you're like, I'm fine. I'm cooking. Yeah. I'm fine. Exactly. I'm fine. A baby's about to come out.
Here's a baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you look back and, you ask him, like, he'll say, like, I'll say the labor was probably, 6-7 hours.
Right.
But for him, he's like, no, you were in labor for like 10 minutes. Like, so he thinks it's, it's pretty incredible. And he was very, we both were very just proud and content and happy that the experience was so much better than the first one. Because he was present too when I had Maverick, and I think sometimes we forget about the dads and how difficult it is for them to watch somebody that they love be in that much pain.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And when I had Maverick, I was in the fetal position, very, very uncomfortable, and he could not help me at all. So to have this second birth that was just very smooth was great for him too, to not have to see me go through that again.
Where was Maverick during all of this?
He was there.
Wow.
So my mom, So my mom was here as well. So she kind of was like watching him to make sure he wasn't like getting into anything.
Yeah.
Because again, he was only 18 months old, but he was there. I actually have a picture of him, like right at the door frame of the bathroom, and he was able to watch it all happen. When we were laying on the floor after he was born, we have a video, and he's like, baby, so it was super awesome.
That's amazing.
That he was able to watch it. I'm sure he doesn't remember any of it, but it's cool for me and to have those memories of him being present. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Definitely. And they seem like best buds. They are going to be such a duo to their little sister when she arrives. I can only imagine what the dynamics are going to be like there.
I know, they're so rough too. I'm like, please just don't hurt her.
Oh, I'm sure she'll whip them into shape. Honestly, I'm sure she's going to be the one running everything. You see how that goes.
She'll
sometimes.
Be like bossing them around.
Yeah,
but they need it. So
Wow.
That's funny.
So going, you're around 32 weeks. That's what you said, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So based on the 2 birth experiences that you've had, and coming out of the 1 home birth, is there anything you're thinking about or holding intention-wise for this birth, either to be similar or different? How are you kind of feeling about this upcoming birth?
So I want to be in the water.
Cool.
And I've told everybody, if I say I have to go to the bathroom, pin me down. Don't let me go, because I really want a water birth.
Okay.
And I'm trying to not get really caught up on it. Because I know, like we said kind of earlier, birth is unpredictable. So that, that might happen. We don't know. I have no idea where I'll have her. But if I can, I would really, really want to have a water birth.
Mm-hmm.
We aren't sure if this is our last child, but we're leaning towards it. So I want to have that experience. I think I use a lot of my personal experiences in my classes and, with my moms when it's appropriate. And so I like to be able to have that knowledge from a firsthand basis. I was actually planning on having Millie at the birth center. We have one here locally just for that reason, so that I could use it for education purposes. I backed out because it didn't really feel right for me, but I like that aspect of having the experience and being able to relate and know what moms are going through and how water birth can help them, or maybe it won't for me because it doesn't for everybody.
Yeah.
So just having that experience, that's important to me. But I think it's very important to go. I don't like to use the words go with the flow because I don't know, but in a way, yes. So I try not to be very obsessive over like birth plans or things. I think it's important for us to have, ideas of what we want so that we can control what we can, but being flexible and knowing that, there might be situations that go down where you have your baby on the bathroom floor, and just being open with that so that you don't get led to being dissatisfied with the experience either.
That's beautifully put. Yeah.
I love the service-oriented mind you have about your birth experience as well. It's incredibly altruistic and beautiful in terms of how you're looking at how your birth experiences will tie into how you will help others and what perspective they can get from you. I think that's so neat. So I appreciate that. And I just know, regardless of your next birth, it's going to add to your wisdom and to what you have to offer and the value you bring to the people that you work with and serve. So I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Excited for you.
It's a blessing, to be able to do that is a blessing to me. Not everybody, obviously can even have children, let alone use their experiences as knowledge. So I feel very blessed to be able to do that. And when I made the transition in between my jobs, that was one of the things I feel silly calling it my calling, but it's like, I really feel that it is. When you're given that opportunity, you have to run with it.
I agree. Is there anything that you want to wrap up with or just share as far as a resource is concerned or anything that you would just leave listeners with?
Like resources, things that were beneficial to me.
Yeah, helpful to you or that you just want to share.
Words of wisdom,
like that.
anything.
Yeah.
Sure. Well, definitely you guys.
Whoop, whoop.
I found your podcast to be very inspiring. I found you guys when I was making the transition to having a home birth with Sebastian and just listening to the birth stories. And now you guys have added even so much more education wise, having other birth professionals on the podcast as well. But just listening to the birth stories is so empowering. Even the ones, back to transferring, as that was one of my fears. You guys have a lot of birth stories on there with moms who transferred, and it was just very empowering and educational and beneficial for me. But also, the business being born, that was a game changer for me, for sure. That was like the first movie I watched, and it was so eye opening. I tell every single mom, even if they're going to have a hospital birth, to watch that, and dad too. Every family definitely watch that. And Ina May Gaskin books, those were huge for me too, which is funny because when I had Maverick, again, back to like, I was not into this lifestyle at all. I was very different. And I was completely turned off by her. I thought it was so one-sided. I did not like it. I was like, I started reading the breastfeeding one and I was like, I couldn't even finish it. I did not like it at all. But once I kind of had a shift in my mind, those books were, I read them all and I'm listened to the audio tapes, everything. They're also very empowering, which I think is kind of one of the biggest things around birth is that empowerment. Just feeling the confidence that you can do this and, that you were made to do this is just most important to me.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank you so much, Abby. You're awesome. We really appreciate you.
Thank you, Abby.
Of course. Thanks for having me.
Quick quick note about the Doing It at Home podcast. Matthew and I are not doctors or medical professionals, and nothing we say should be taken as medical advice or opinion. If you have medical or health-related questions, please take them to a trained professional. We're here simply to entertain you with stories and conversations about pregnancy, birth, and parenthood.